Recently, I was looking at a video made by h.thomas Ackerman, and he's working on sculpture. And I've always enjoyed sculpture as a former bronzesmith. That's one type of art I'm most familiar with. And as a bronzesmith, you have the unique ability to be able to handle the piece over and over and over again in various forms, whether it be wax or the actual metal itself as you finish it and join it in pieces. So unlike most people only able to, other than the artist, only able to view the sculpture, you actually handle it over and over and over again, and you get a very different impression. You're able to get impressions of the sculpture when you're in touch with it. So his piece is called Broken Symmetries, and I really enjoy his foray into sculpture in this way. And he posited a question to me that I've been thinking on for many days, and I'm not certain that I have the right answer. I'm not sure there is a right answer. The question I've been ruminating on is basically this: what the art of our time needs to express or look like, or has the human species become too dysfunctional for it to matter any other than an isolated individual's last act of resistance and defiance? It's such a complicated question. I think the only way for me to really grasp it is to address it sort of in a backwards way. Addressing first, has the human species become too functional for it to matter other than an isolated individual's last act of resistance and defiance? And I would say that we're all isolated. We're isolated the moment we come out of the womb. We are born into this world, and we exit the world alone. And a great deal of our time on this earth is spent alone or by oneself. So the natural state of a person is isolation. Because an artist spends much more time in introspection, much more time looking at things, looking at history, and thinking about ideas, thinking about society, thinking in general to find a way to communicate something meaningful, to create a piece that is meaningful, that has purpose, and delivers something to society. So they're introspective, they're soul-searching. The time they spend thinking, the time they spend researching and discovering, and the time that they spend in isolation with their thoughts. Sometimes I imagine that process can be torturous and lonely. So and in many instances, it's definitely not profitable. You don't see many artists that are multimillionaires. Usually great art is not really recognized until after the artist is dead, which is unfortunate. And I think as a society, we've lost some of our appreciation for art, which I consider to be the highest form of self-actualization or actualization of a society. It's the pinnacle of a healthy society, is for its people to be able to express themselves in artistic forms. Because the artist is thinking about the human species, because the artist is thinking about the condition of society, they're definitely going to come to some conclusions about dysfunction. There's a lot of dysfunction in this world. And that very understanding is going to lead toward a position of resistance and defiance, to resist the things that are inherently evil or immoral in society, and stand in defiance against those things, to send a message through their art into society in a way that will inspire or help people to understand, to leave a message or a warning or an image where we can enjoy the artist's meditation on these subjects and draw something from them. If we were a healthier society, we would all spend more time thinking in introspection and retrospection. And I believe that if we had that time and more people engaged in it, we would all be resistant and defiant towards these ills that we see in modern society. Simply by the virtue of being inspired to even think about this topic, I don't consider the human species to be too dysfunctional for art not to matter. In fact, I think art matters now more than ever. We need to reconnect with that pinnacle of self-actualization or societal actualization that's really at the top, that really is the pinnacle. Unfortunately, we're living in an age where art is not appreciated, where art is not taught. It used to be not even 100 years ago that every person learned how to play a musical instrument. My great-grandmother knew how to play the piano, and it was virtually unheard of for people around that time not to know how to play at least one instrument, or to be able to sing, or to paint. Artistic endeavors were very, very important to society, and now they're not even taught in school. Instead, they've elected to go towards route memorization and testing from an adaptive computer and really dehumanizing our educational systems. And that's why we see, I think, so much dysfunction, is because we've become detached from the introspection that is required to create great art. The slave masters that develop the system that run the planet right now based on money are blind to the value of introspection. They don't want people to take the time to reflect, because if they took the time, or they had the time to reflect, or they were taught how to reflect, or how to critically think, or how to paint, or use an instrument, or sculpt, all of these things require a great deal of patience and a lot of time thinking about the nature of things. And that's the last thing that the powers that be at present really want society to be doing. Because as soon as someone starts to heavily reflect on the dysfunctions of our society, it becomes very dangerous for the system. So an artist that is working today is definitely going to feel a level of resistance, because they've recognized intuitively, or through a great deal of introspection or retrospection, that it is absolutely necessary to defy these systems that have corrupted humanity, that make us all ignorant, make us all more detached from ourselves. So, yes, a good artist they are an act of resistance. They are an act of defiance. And artists are so important to a society. And the healthier a society is, the more artists it can produce or will produce. And the more insights that we will all be able to benefit from by enjoying more art in the world. As many things are brought into creation that really don't need to be brought into creation, making us slaves to our own creations in many instances. It would be a wonderful thing if we could devote more of our lives in the pursuit of understanding art, creating art, viewing art, and looking to see what artists are communicating through their work. I can understand where being an artist almost at times, especially in our dysfunctional society, it feels to be almost a thankless task because people are much more interested, seemingly, many people are much more interested in material things. They'd rather have, a neck chain with a dollar sign on it studded with diamonds, which really aren't worth anything. They're quite common, that costs $300,000, or a Rolex watch that keeps time as well as a Timex watch as a symbol of status just because of what it costs. They don't appreciate the Monet because it's beautiful. They don't appreciate the Van Gogh because it was a unique way of looking at the world where Van Gogh got an impression of things. They're only interested in it because they can show it off, because it has monetary value. Hey, look at me. I own this. I own this. They'd rather not put it in a museum for people to see. It's the rare individual that donates to a museum. More, it's about the pursuit of having the thing, of possessing the thing, not understanding the thing. And a lot of great art, and unfortunately most great art, I think, history has shown us, is not really appreciated until after the artist is dead. All that time that's spent mastering a technique, it takes a lot of skill to sculpt. It takes a lot of skill to paint. It takes a lot of time. And then the journey, the self-exploration, the retrospection, the financial difficulties to produce something that is able to communicate something more than just words, to communicate something of the spirit through a medium. It's like music being a bridge between heaven and earth. Art is the same. It gives us a unique insight. The viewer is able to gain an insight into the artist's insight. And it's a wonderful marriage of spirit lacking telepathy. It's an amazing way to communicate across time and space. A way to communicate things that are not easily said. Communication of spirit. So to answer the last part of the question first, it matters. Art matters now more than ever. And it is the way of the artist to be isolated, because the depths of great art come from within. And that's one of the things that we're woefully lacking in modern society, is that ability to look inside of ourselves, our ability to be comfortable with ourselves in our isolation. The selfie generation, the constant need to put out updates and take pictures of oneself, to always be connected, is unnatural. we naturally spend most of our lives with ourselves. And the last act of resistance, never the last act of resistance. Resistance and defiance is absolutely necessary when you've addressed, when you've discovered, when you've seen, when you've become enlightened, or you're in the process of searching for enlightenment through art, through self-discovery, through observations and discoveries about the world. Last act of resistance and defiance. May we all be resistant and defiant against those things that are evil, against those things that are unnatural, against those things that make humanity ill. We'll always have that spirit. That spirit to resist, to defy, is a spirit of creation that will inevitably help humanity get back in touch with the things that are truly and uniquely human.